Hello, young people. Welcome to the very first Newton's Attic online engineering project. I'm Engineer Bill, and today we're going to build this really cute little catapult here over the next couple of hours. And let me show you how well it works here. Are you ready, Dawn? Whoops, I'm having trouble with my little piece of candy. There we go. All right, dead shot, perfect.
Right in the face. Thank you.
Okay. But before we get started, I would like to thank the audience for being here. I know it's trying times. I hope everyone is well, everyone is safe, and we're all in good spirits. Also, I would like to remind you to please subscribe and turn on your notifications. Now, also, I would like for you to please be patient with us. This is the very first time we've ever done this, and we will hit a few bumps along the way. And we've also only had less than a week, or about a week, to pull this entire project off. So, it may look easy here, but it has not been an easy week. All right, so let's get started on our kit here. I'm going to put this out of the way. And here we go. So the very first thing you want to do, if you haven't already done this, is make sure you've got all your parts. And hopefully you've done this beforehand, but there should be about 36, 37 parts. I've got mine all laid out on the table here, and they're in numerical order so that I can easily get to them as I need them. Okay, I got my tools over here. I've got my wax paper in a minute we're going to get to when we start gluing. I got my little paper towel I'm going to need, sandpaper. But I've already kind of tweaked this one a little bit, so it should be pretty much ready to go. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is do a dry fit test just to make sure all the parts fit together. And the other reason why we want to do this, that's the first reason, to make sure they fit. The second reason is, as we're gluing, we're going to learn how to put the parts together in a certain order, and we want to do that while it's dry, not while we've got glue everywhere and making everything sticky and yucky. So the first thing we want to do, let's grab this piece right here. That's our base. That's piece number 1. Okay. All our parts are numerically ordered sequentially. So we grab part number 1, and I'm going to set it down on the table with the numbers and all that facing up. So I've got all my little numbers right here facing up. Then I'm going to grab part number 2, and it goes in the slots with all of the number 2s on it. Okay, that fits good right there. Now I'm going to grab part number 3, put it in there, make sure it fits, and make sure it goes flush all the way down. Let me see if I can't. Yeah, see how that line right along the bottom there is nice and flush. Okay, we'll do that with both parts. Okay, then I grab part number 4, put it in the things. Now, I grab part that's labeled number 6, and we talked about this in the manual. That's the one of a couple of mistakes that we made. Yeah, we do make mistakes. And that's going to go, number 6 is going to go in the slots labeled number 5. Okay, and it's the only one it can go in, so you can't really make a mistake. And then part number 5 is going to go in the slots labeled number 6. Okay, now I'm going to grab part number 7, the long part here. And this is where it starts to get just a little bit tricky. I've got to slide it down into all of these other little slots on parts 2 through 6. And sometimes you have to kind of wiggle it a little bit to get it to go. Push it down. You may have to kind of twist it just a little bit. And don't be afraid to push a little bit hard. These parts they're not super strong, but they're not super delicate either. You want to make sure that it snaps all the way down in place, again, so that this corner right here, get in the camera here, so that everything is flush and that this bottom part right here, all along there, is good and flush. Okay, there's part number 7, part number 8, which is identical, should drop in, and it may actually be a little bit easier to pop in since the other part is holding it in place. All right. Now I'm going to turn it over. And so now I've got the base of my catapult fitted together. It's finished. I'm going to set it down like this. Okay. Now I want to grab part number 9. That's this really funny looking part here. And it's got it's not just slots, but it actually has little teeth that go in. So drop it into, you may have to turn it back over to see which slots. They're the 3 long ones down the middle here. See? Right along here. Okay. Oops, we've lost our, oh, there we go. Those 3 right there, okay? They should push in like so. Then take part number 10 right here, okay? And put it in the slot at the back, okay, like this, all right, with the parts. Let's see, here we go, right there. Then the tab that's in the back of part number 9 should slide into, I'm going to have to set this down to do that, slide into part number 10, like that. So there you go. Let's see, oops. All right, I got to get used to using my camera here. Okay, so that's part number 9 and 10. Now we grab part number 11, which is one of our uprights here. Okay, and it's going to go in.
Hey Bill, I'm going to jump in here.
Sure.
This is Keith. I'm the one running the video show here. So we just had a question. What do we do if we don't have a part?
Oh darn, that's not good.
So
which part are you missing?
It depends on the part. I see it in the live chat. Happy Gorilla. If you can post which part you're missing and follow along with as many of the steps as you can without that part.
Yeah, we might be able to make do. It doesn't mean that you can't complete or mostly complete your catapult. We just need to know which part it is. So if you can text us, chat it with us, what that part is, I'll see if I can offer a suggestion.
And then, of course, we'll send you the part as soon as we can.
There's also a question about when it will be.
Yeah, I posted in the chat too. The final video will be posted about an hour or within the hour after the video is done, and we're getting requests to slow down a little bit.
Okay,
too.
I'll slow down. All right. So, well, let's take a break for just a second. I mean, not take a break, not go anywhere, but let's kind of slow down and let's see.
But we can also remind them that they will be able to go back and replay it at any time if they get behind, and that we'll take a break.
Right, we're going to take a break partway through. So if you do get a little bit behind, there will be plenty of time to catch up. But remember, you will be able to replay this video later and play it at your own pace and rewind as often as you want in order to make everything fit together.
And I'll jump in here again.
Okay.
You can, if you look to the bottom of the screen, you can actually pause and rewind the live stream. So you can rewind and then catch back up. When we take a break. So we'll be taking, 5-minute breaks every so often.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, let me go on. I'll slowly go on here. So the next part that's going to go in is part number 11. And if you turn your thing over upside down, you'll see the parts that are labeled. And actually, I just realized for the first time that part number 7 covers up a little bit of the labeling of part number 11. But it's going to fit in just like this, okay? So that's our upright that holds our catapult together, holds the arm together. Okay, so it should slide in fairly easily. Then the next part is part number 12. Maybe I'll just start holding every part up. Yeah, I'm having trouble. There we go. Okay, there we go, all right. And that'll kind of slow me down a little bit. And it's going to go into the base, and it actually is a brace for part number 11. So it forms a little triangle like that. Okay, let me rotate this down around a little bit. There we go. And don't worry if it's kind of moving around a little bit. It's not, since it hasn't been glued, it's going to wiggle around a little bit, and the parts may pop out on you a little bit, but that's okay. All right, so there's part number 11, part number 12. Okay, now I'm going to set that aside for a minute because we're going to work on the arm. And just to kind of slow things down a little bit, I'm going to show you roughly how the arm fits into the catapult. If you notice the pivot point right here, okay, right next to the number on both 13 and on part 14, that's the part that will line up with the hole in part number 11 here. And that's what the arm pivots around, okay? So the catapult actually pivots like this. And in fact, I can show you on our original catapult. Okay, you can see here, you can see how the arm goes through the two upright parts. Okay, we're eventually going to put a little wooden dowel rod through there, and that's what gives it its pivot point. Okay, so hopefully we're kind of slowing things down here a little bit and people are starting to get caught up. What I want to do now is I want to grab parts 13 and 14. I'm going to put them in front of me. And parts 16 and 17. Okay. Now, in a minute, you're going to discover that we made, actually, you may have already discovered another mistake that we made on part, I believe it's part 13. Some of the parts don't have this little pocket cut out. Okay, and that's a long story. We'll talk about later about why that happened, or maybe in another video. But that's just one of those things that happens in the world of engineering, in the world of manufacturing. Okay, so I've got parts 13 and parts 14 here in front. I also want part 15. I'm going to set that down there because I'm going to need that in just a minute. So now pick up parts 13 and 14, and I want to put them side by side so that this writing is on the outside, okay, of my two arms put together. See, I got my two arms, the clear sides go together, okay, like that. And there are a couple of things we can do to hold this together so that we get all of the little parts lined up properly. And the first thing I want to do is take part number 15, and it goes on the back end in this little set of notches right here, okay? It's like this, with the curved part facing towards the long end. I'm probably going to drop this here if I'm not careful. Okay, it pushes in, okay, just like that. See that? Okay, and what it does, it helps hold the back end together and keeps everything aligned. Now at this point, just to make life a little easier, I'm going to take one of my binder clips. I'm just going to clamp it together like that. Okay, that holds everything kind of together. Another thing I can do, well actually I don't need to do that. All right, so I've got side 14 and I've got side 13. And some of you who have read ahead or looked ahead notice that I've got glue face B and glue face B on both sides of my catapult arm. Well, that's another mistake. One of them is supposed to say glue face A, because I want to take part number 16 and it says glue face A, but part 14 says glue face B. So part 16 and part 14 go together with the writing touching or facing each other, okay? So it's going to go like this. Okay, now the other thing you need to notice is that part 16 is a lot bigger than the curved part on part 14. We're making a little channel here, and you'll understand what that channel does later on. But so what I want part 14 and part 16 to go together like so. And we'll do the best we can to line up the little holes. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over like this, and I'm going to set it down on the table with, and I don't know if we can see this on the screen or not, I want the back end of my binder clip hanging off the table so that the arm sits fairly flat and flush on the table. Otherwise it might be a little difficult. So what I want to do now, I want to line up the holes as best I can, first just by eyeballing it. Then I grab one of my little, got a little hanger on here, one of my little pegs, the little short little round pegs, they're only about 1/2 inch long, okay, 10 millimeters or so. And that is going to push down in the hole. And it should go all the way down so there's only just a little bit sticking out. You want the end of this to go all the way down to the table. Okay, now I'm going to grab another one and put it in. And I'm going to grab a third one and put it in the third hole. And that one's being a little bit tricky, so I'm just going to kind of slide my parts back and forth until they all three drop in. Now it's a little bit difficult for me to pick this up at this point because my pins will fall out. But what you should try to have is that the amount of peg that's sticking up past face B there is about the same amount as the thickness of your part 17, which is going to go on top. Then we simply put the 3 holes in part 17 over the 3 pegs like that, such that the little tooth right here that's on the end of part 17 is up near the little hook on the end of our arm. Okay, so there we go. Now I've got all the parts, all 4 of those little parts together. I'm going to slide it to the edge of the table. And if your pegs fall out, it's really not any big deal. Don't worry about that. But this is what everything should look like. So you can see my pegs are flush. Let me see, I'll rotate this around like so. Okay, you can see there's no peg sticking out of either side. All right, and you now see my little channel right here. It's a little groove. We've made a groove. And that's what our rubber band's going to ride in later on. Okay, now I'm going to take another binder clip and I'm going to pinch it out. And I'm just going to hold everything together. And in fact, I'm going to put it right over that pin in the middle, and that'll just help hold that pin in place. Okay, so now I'm going to flip it over. Oh, one of my pins kind of slid out there, but that's all right. Now the next step we can do, we're going to go ahead and take this binder clip off the back because it's going to get in the way. So now, I'll tell you what, let's just set this aside for a minute. There's one other quick little thing we want to do. And I'm going to use my little binder clips there to stand it up. Grab the long dowel rod that you've got here. Now, inside your small little packet are lots of little circles that look like this, okay? And some of them have 1 dot on it, some of them have 2 dots, and some of them have 3 dots. Now the reason we didn't, you only need 6 total to build your kit. But the reason there are more than 6 included and the reason they're marked is because these dowel rods, although you buy them in long sticks and you cut them up, they're not exactly uniform in their diameter, okay? So let me show you. For part number 1 has the smallest hole in it. Part number 2 has a little bit bigger hole, or disc number 2, or spacer number 2. And spacer number 3 has the largest hole. So in this particular case, the one with the single little dot, I don't know if you can see it there or not. Yeah, maybe. Okay, it just slides over my dowel rod. In fact, it's a nice little fit. It slides pretty easily. But let me show you another piece of 1/4-inch dowel rod, probably even maybe from the same stick. This is much tighter, okay? And in fact, it's actually kind of difficult to push it on and off. And so to get over that problem, I included larger circles or larger holes inside the same size spacer. And you can see now this one slides through much more easily and it's easier to put on. Okay, so what you need to do is find 2 spacers that easily slide over your dowel. Okay, so we're going to put 2 on there, and in my case 1 happens to fit okay. All right, then, yes ma'am, question? All right.
Yeah, I was just going to say, once we get the spacers, why don't we let them, since they're going to have to search for spacers, why don't we take a little bit, not a break here, but let's go ahead and do our Ask an Engineer segment.
Okay, we can ask an engineer. Oh, this is going to be tricky.
Here
a little dangerous here. All right, what do we got?
Almost there.
Okay, so Bill, what made you want to be an engineer?
I knew I was going to get this question. I think being an engineer is kind of in your blood, and it certainly was in my blood. First of all, my father was an engineer, and I grew up in an engineering household, but I remember being, when I was very young, 5, 6, 7 years old, I loved playing with things called Lincoln Logs back then. I don't think anybody has Lincoln Logs anymore. It's kind of the precursor to Legos, but I loved playing with Lincoln Logs, and then when Legos came along, that was great. But I always liked tinkering in the shop, and of course my dad would take me to work with him, and I got to see machines that made things, and he made things, and he'd show me all the different parts that he would make and design, and then he'd show how they fit together in the machines, and I just thought that was absolutely fascinating, how you could take chunks of steel or metal or plastic or wood or whatever, shape them to the right shape, clamp them together, and then have a machine that actually does something that you want it to do, and I thought that's really fascinating. And ever since then, I just love designing mechanisms, I like making things, I like playing with things, and just being an engineer is all I've ever really wanted to do.
All right, so those of you out there watching, please, if you've got any other questions we can use to put Bill on the spot, go ahead and post them in chat.
Yeah, we like to do
that. And we'll continue to do our segment.
Almost there.
All right, so we're going back?
Yeah.
Okay, so now hopefully we're mostly caught up. If you're having trouble or if I'm going too fast still, please call in or text in and let us know, chat in, whatever you want to call the term. All right, so I've got 2 pegs or 2 spacers on my peg. I'm going to put that through my arm here, through the hole. Oops, I just lost a part, but that's okay. All right, then I'm going to put 2 more spacers on the other side. And don't worry, I'll swing this around in a second to show it. Okay, so I've got, I want to kind of even this up here a little bit. Okay, see I've got 2 spacers on each side of the arm. Okay, now this is where it starts getting a little bit tricky. I want to put the arm into the upright. Okay, and I'm actually going to let it go back into the back part of the cradle right there. That's one reason why this little part back here is to kind of help hold the arm and keep it steady. Okay, so then I've got my arm in place. I'm going to take the other part, part 20. Okay, yes ma'am.
Somebody requested
Question.
a close-up of the arm you just built.
Okay, sure. Let me pull it back out. And we'll take a nice close-up of the arm. Okay, you can see here's part 17. You can't see the part number, but that's okay. Now some of you all, one of these is not cut out, so it's going to look slightly differently to you all. Let me rotate it around here a little slowly so you can see what's going on. I've got my 2 spacers, one right there, one right there, then 2 more on this other side. And I got my hand in the way, sorry about that. Okay. All right.
Somebody says the peg won't fit also.
Okay, it won't fit through the arm? Or it won't fit on a spacer? Because I can show you a trick for dealing with that. All right, here's the arm part in the back. Let me show you a little trick if you're having trouble getting your peg through the hole in your arms, which is a little hard to change. Take the sandpaper, and ideally if you have something round, like a pen or a pencil, take the sandpaper, and the first thing you want to do is kind of roll it up to get it started in a curved shape. Just kind of roll it up over the pen or the pencil like this. Okay, just to kind of get it biased a little bit to being round. Then take the pen and pencil out, you don't need that anymore, and then roll this up as tightly as you can. Okay. Then I'm going to take the peg back out. Whoops, there goes my little spacer, but that's all right, I've got more. And I want to force that down in the hole. Okay. And I'm going to sit here and twist. And that's going to take just a little bit of the wood out of that hole. And I go back and forth this way too. All right, just twist back and forth, and you'll see a little bit of the wood actually transferring to the sandpaper. It's discoloring the sandpaper. You probably can't see it here. It's too, yeah, you can see a little bit of sawdust right there. Okay, and see this side over here is nice and black still. Okay, so we're going to do this and keep doing this. You're going to just kind of have to keep doing this back and forth, and you'll pull this out, and you'll test fit your pen, kind of blow it out there a little bit, and you're just going to have to keep doing that until your pen fits. Now, I am a little surprised if you're having trouble getting it through the hole in the arm, because I thought I made that considerably larger than even the largest of the variations in the arm, in the dowel rods. So
So
hopefully
could be-
that worked.
You know, in my talk too, there were some, not every piece that came out was exactly the same. There were definitely some variances.
Well, there are,
in the
yeah.
production.
That's a whole other conversation, but parts do vary. That's just the way manufacturing is. No 2 parts are exactly identical. And there's not a whole lot we can do about that. Okay, so hopefully that will work for you. I'm going to go ahead now and put my arm back into place. Then, taking part 20, that's a little bit tricky too here, because you kind of have to come in at an angle into those bottom 2 slots and just kind of wiggle everything around and get it to go over. I'll take this binder clip off just to, oops, no, I don't want to do that. Let me see if I can get this guy back on there. Okay, so there we go. Then part 21 is going to go into place. Now, there are only 2 other little really easy parts. I'm going to rotate this around. Don't worry, I'm going to show everybody what it should look like. The last 2 parts are really simple. It's part 18 and 19. And they're going to go back here on the back This forms a little basket that you put your whatever you want to launch in. Okay. And the high part goes towards the back of the arm. So it makes a little basket right there like that. So here is your arm, or your catapult dry fitted together. And hopefully everybody is not having too much trouble getting to this position. And you know what? This might be, what do you guys think? This might be a good time to just take a couple minutes to let everybody get caught up. We're at a good stopping point for the moment.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break here?
Take a 5-minute break.
If you need to refresh your memory on anything that Bill has said, you can use the rewind function. Just drag the slider back on YouTube, and as soon as you're caught up, you can fast forward. So we're going to go ahead and do a 5-minute break starting in 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome back. I hope you have a chance to get caught up here. I understand that a few of you are missing some parts. I really apologize for that. I'm sorry. We'll try to get those out to you as fast as we can. But in the meantime, I believe there's a young man named Alfred who was missing a dowel. Is that correct, Keith?
Okay. Actually, it was
Edward
Adams. We saw you in chat, and I
Edward.
see you found it. It was
Oh.
stuck to the tape in the bag. So.
Oh, okay, good. So,
All
all
right,
he's
so
got his parts. All right,
another
very
one
good.
averted, but just as
right.
please ask anything like that comes up. We may have a workaround, and if we
Yeah.
don't, we'll definitely send you out replacement parts.
All right.
And we'll do our best to help you work through anything that's missing or not working the way that you think it is. That's what.
Very good.
Please use the chat and let us know.
Okay, so here's where we are. We've dry fitted our catapult together. I want to take it, show it to everybody again, just to make sure we kind of give it a go around. What the plan is now, we're going to take it back apart in just a minute, and then we're going to start gluing it together. Okay, and the gluing process will probably actually take a little bit longer. Actually, it will take longer than the dry fit. Hopefully all of your parts went together okay. If you're having a little bit of stiffness or a little bit of trouble getting them together, that's what the sandpaper is for, to help kind of smooth some of those pieces of wood out and make the clearances a little bit higher. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take it back apart, and I want to try to put the parts back onto the table in roughly the same order that I took them off, so I know where they are. I can reach for them pretty efficiently. And I'll tell you what, let's do. I put my wax paper out. That's so I can protect my table from getting any glue on it. And what I like to do, you can do it however you want, but there's a reason why the glue tool here was included, okay? I've watched young people use glue, and sometimes it can be quite a mess. But what I like to do here, and this might make it a little bit less messy and a little bit easier to control, let's just take this is part of the styrofoam backing that came with your kit. And it's just, at this point, it's waste. So I cut it up into a small square. I'm just going to put a big blob of glue on there, about that big, about the size of a quarter when it kind of flows out. And put the glue aside. They may have gotten a piece of cardboard. If you didn't get the pink foam, you may have gotten a piece of cardboard. You can use that. You can use the corner of your wax paper, but you got to be careful not to set your parts in it later on when you're actually gluing. So to warm up, we're going to glue a really easy part together first, and that's the little basket part right here, okay? Can we get the side camera going, Keith? Okay, that's the little part that forms the basket. So what I want to do, and the way you want to put glue on, you want just as much as you need and no more. You don't want it running down the sides because that just causes a mess and causes a problem. So I'm going to take my glue stick here and I'm going to take the fat end. Okay, I got the pointy end and I got the fat end. And I'm just going to scoop up a little bit of glue on the end of it like so. Okay, not very much. It doesn't take a whole lot, right? So just a little bit of glue on the end there. Then I'm going to use that tool to go right on the edge of the wood that has the little tab sticking up, okay? And I don't put it on the bottom, do not put it on this face right here, okay? Don't put it on the tab. Let me show it this way too. Don't put any glue right along this edge here, just along this edge and this edge, because that actually sticks out the bottom and you could end up gluing yourself to the table if you're not careful. So I've got the glue, and I've seen people do that. Okay. So just a little bit of glue on each side, like so. See that? You can see where it's white against the, all right. Then I'm going to take it, this is part number 18, and it's going to go right down into the slot on part number 15, and make sure that the little pointy end of this piece here is towards the small end of 15. Don't put it on backwards, okay? The large part, the large end here, okay, large part of the triangle here goes next to the curved part. See that? So it looks like that, right? Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to set that down, and I'm going to glue up my other part, part number 19. I've got a little bit more glue on my stick. Whoops, I don't need quite that much. Another thing that works pretty well is to use a scraping method, kind of like this. So I've got glue on the end, on the back side, and you kind of scrape it off, all right? I'm going to dab it there. I need just a little bit more. Okay. And I'm avoiding putting it on. Let me get back over here in the center of the camera. I'm going to avoid putting it on the peg itself or the tab. Okay, and it goes on the other side, just like the first piece. Okay. Like so. All right. So there is what it should look like.
All right, we had another question come in.
Sure.
That is, what do they do if the pegs are too small and won't stay in? I let them know that we're going to be gluing them in a few minutes, but
yeah, that's fine.
Can...
That's not a bad problem to have. Don't worry about that. We're going to glue them in, and eventually the glue will hold them. Okay. There's really only one peg you need to be concerned about, and that's the one that forms the axis. Okay. The other two pegs, all they do is keep the parts lined up while the glue is drying. So you could take them back out. Yes, sir.
They pointed out when you did the dry fit, you said that part went together the other way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did I? All right, I'm sorry. But it should look like this, okay?
Well, wait a minute.
Oh, wait a minute. No, I do have this backwards.
Looks like we have some observant.
All right, all right. No, that's one on
Thank you for
one on
that.
me. There you go. Okay.
Oh,
can we rewind here for a minute and just kind of start over?
Thank
you. Who was that?
That was Captain Shanjo.
Captain Shanjo. Thank you.
That would be Sean sitting right upstairs.
All right. All right. I will make these parts idiot-proof from now on because it looks like idiot right here. Can't do it right. Okay, so let's make sure everybody that I finally got it right. Yes, the 9-year-old corrected the 50-year-old engineer.
Keith's son.
Okay, yeah. All right. The curved part goes like that. All right. So there you go. That's what it should look like. All right. This is one for the archives here. I'll never live this down. Okay. So sorry about that, folks. That's what it should look like. The small part of the triangle to the curved part there.
So now you know this is truly live.
This is live TV, right? Okay. Unrehearsed. Okay. But that's okay. We make mistakes. It happens. All right. Oops, I'm knocking parts all over the place. Okay, now, that was just kind of a little warm up. We got the mistake out of the way. So we made a mistake on a small part, and that's good. Easy to fix. Fortunately, our glue didn't dry. Now let's go ahead and disassemble the rest of our catapult, okay? So I'm just going to take the parts. It doesn't really matter what order you do that in. I kind of like to do it in the order that I put it together in so that I know roughly where my parts are. Going back, we'll take this apart. Okay, this one was over here. That one's up there. This guy goes there. And I want to lay my parts down so the numbers are facing up so I know exactly which part I'm supposed to grab. Okay. Some arm pieces.
Why did you take off?
Because I got to reglue it now. Little question from the peanut gallery there. Okay, now I'm going to pull the... now this can be a little tricky getting these parts to come back apart. So pull it up a little bit on one end, a little bit on the other end, and you kind of rock it up and out. Okay. Same thing with part number 7. Oh, well, I got all of them all at once there.
So, but I'll just jump in and say the
Yes,
reason that we dry fit this stuff is to find any fitment issues before we get the glue out and start putting things together.
Right.
Because once we have the glue out, if we have a fitment issue, then you're working against the clock. The glue's drying, the pressure increases. So we do a dry run to make sure it all fits before we break out the glue and make it permanent.
And we try to get the parts on right. Okay, so now I've got all my parts back apart. I got my little basket over here is drying. Little cute little guy. Okay. So now I'm going to start with, I've got my back to the base plate. It's face up on the wax paper. Okay.
Like they need a little bit more time to get everything.
Yeah, let's just take another question, or what do you think?
Anybody have anything else to ask an engineer?
See, are there any, we'll put it out there. It's going to take a couple seconds to get
What's
feedback.
It like
If anybody
to be an
having...
introvert in the next
What's it like to be an introvert? Well, they saw the warning at the beginning, right? It's difficult sometimes, yes. I am an introvert. I know lots of young kids who are interested in engineering are often introverts and maybe a little bit socially challenged. I was like that. I'm still like that. And that's just the way the world is. You have to learn how to deal with it. And sometimes it's not easy. So guys, girls, if you're uncomfortable, I know what it feels like. Okay.
Do we want to, why don't we just do 5 minutes here, let everybody get it all apart?
Sure, let's do another 5-minute break and we'll catch back up. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. See you in a minute. 5 minutes. All right, we're back and we're ready to do some more gluing. So we're going to switch to the close-up cam. All right, I've got my base plate with the numbers sticking up. It's going to be very similar to the way we dry fitted it. Just this time we put glue on the parts as we go along. Okay, and this is going to take some patience. It takes a while to get the glue on here. So we just kind of sit back, take our time, and do this right.
Anything to have to say about patience and engineering?
Patience and engineering can sometimes be at odds. All right, so here we go again. I probably don't need to show you everything I'm gluing together because once you understand how it works, it's pretty much self-guiding. But the part with the tabs, I just want to do the spaces in between and not on top of the tabs. And we go on both sides of the tabs, like you can see what I'm doing here. Okay. And this would be a good time if anybody has a question they want to ask, because I'm just going to be sitting here doing this. Probably going to take 20-30 minutes at least to get through this part. And then one step is going to look like the next as we start to glue. Now, I want to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion here. See the part that says Newton's Attic on it? Make that face out, okay, towards the front of your catapult, so I get a little commercial. Thank you. Okay. Oh, I'll tell you what we might talk about while we're gluing parts up. I'm going to move to part number 3 now, just like we did in the dry fit. Do you think it's okay to, I think we'll go ahead and, one of the things that we would like to hear from all you young people is what kind of other projects, we have lots of projects in mind, but we'd like to get your opinion on some projects and maybe offer up some of the things that you'd like for us to see, or would like for us to put together so that you can then get it in a kit. Now, I can't promise or guarantee that we'll do every idea that everybody requests, but we're certainly open to ideas and suggestions. We want to make things that young people think are fun to do and to play with. All right, I've got part number 3 going in. This part doesn't matter whether it goes forward or backwards. Okay. Now moving on to part number 4. Oops. In fact, it doesn't really matter if you do part number 4, 5, or 6 in what order. Just as long as you get all 3 of them glued in. And I hope everybody's doing okay with the glue. And remember, less is more. You don't need a whole lot of glue on there. You don't want it running down the side of your catapult, because once it dries, it doesn't really look all that good.
Yeah, Bill, I'll jump in here too. Having, as you can see behind Bill, all those airplanes that are up on the wall are airplanes that I've built. And one thing I've learned from building, flying these small things is any glue that you can see is doing nothing for you. It's just there, and possibly it's a fillet, adding a little bit of strength. But for the most part, if you can see the glue outside of the glue joint, it's not doing a whole lot. And the more it is, the less it's doing for you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about fillets, Keith. That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to mention it. And in a second, we'll show you what a fillet is. A fillet is just a tiny little bit of glue that you see around the joint, and sometimes they're used to strengthen the joint. And you can see, well, this really isn't a fillet, but it's sort of what it looks like. See, I've got a tiny little bit of glue. Well, it's going to be really hard for the people at home to see. But I can see, let me have my glue stick, just a tiny little bit of glue right along there. That's perfectly fine. Just a tiny little bit's fine. What you don't want is it running down in big drips down the side of your catapult. Okay, I'm on step number 6, 5, 6 here.
You could also tell them how you designed and made it on the laser cutter a little bit while you're...
Well, we could talk about that, yeah. A lot of people ask, where do things come from? A lot of people don't really understand where things come from. This kit, I didn't buy this kit off the internet and then turn around and resell it. When did we start? About a week ago, we sent out a survey to see how many people would like to do this.
We sent the survey out on Friday, the Friday that the kids got out of school.
Okay, and between that Friday and today, we kicked into high gear, and starting with nothing more than an idea. Of course, catapults have been around for a long time. I didn't invent the catapult, obviously, but this is my own little design because I had to make a kit that we could manufacture or fabricate and send, because we couldn't just go out and buy lots of kits and then turn around and resell them. So I had to design this, and that's the part that takes a while, but I think that's one of the funnest parts.
What took you the longest?
Well, what takes me the longest is to figure out how to make something look at least reasonably attractive. As an engineer, I'm not really particularly very good at making things look nice. I can make them function properly, and that's kind of the easy part. But to make things have nice flowing lines and graceful edges and smooth look to them is much more difficult for me. Now, some of you all who may be a little bit more artistically inclined might have no trouble at all making things look really cool. And let's face it, even though we want our catapult to function properly, it's awfully nice if it looks cool too. So we should never be hesitant to try to make things look as cool as possible.
What about the computer part?
Yes. Now, originally, the very first thing that I do as an engineer when I have an idea, I'll think about it for a while. And sometimes I'll hop on the internet and look at pictures. And boy, is the internet a great source for that kind of thing. When I was growing up, when I was your all's age, boys and girls, young people, we didn't have the internet. It didn't exist. Nobody even had an idea of what the internet was.
But
We just barely had computers.
But we did have electricity, unlike what
But-
one young man asked you the other day.
We did have electricity. We had things called encyclopedias. And I doubt any young person out there has ever even seen an encyclopedia, although I should be careful. I don't know what they've seen and haven't seen. All right, so I'm on part number 7. Be nice to get a little feedback to know how everybody else is doing, if we're going fast or slow, how the gluing is going.
Well, we did have one. Matt says, thanks, everything went to plan, so I think he may have moved ahead of us.
Okay,
He
well-
knew where this was headed and possibly has...
Well, Matt,
Now, I will just say that the hardest part of building this is going to be leaving it alone once you've got it glued together
man.
for a couple of hours. How long are we going to suggest they don't touch it?
well, ideally, and I know this is going to be about impossible, but ideally it'd be nice to go overnight.
Yeah, so overnight, just let the glue dry. This isn't fast drying glue, but it is strong glue as long as you let it sit.
That is going to be the hardest part of this whole process, is once we finish gluing it, is just setting it aside and leaving it alone. All right, and that was Matt who's jumped ahead. Well, good job, Matt. More power to you, and I hope you can get it finished. Sounds like you're thinking and moving ahead on us. Now, another thing that you all are witnessing right now is what happens when an engineer engages in color commentary.
So while we've got the glue going, Bill, I'll talk a little bit about the machine that made this.
Yes, talk about the laser.
The all of these kits were cut on a laser cutter. It's a machine that can hold about a 4-foot by 3-foot piece of material, and it shoots ours has an 80-watt laser. So a laser light beam comes out of one side of this 80-watt tube, and it bounces off of a couple mirrors, and then it goes through a focusing lens, and by the time it gets to the end, with all that focused energy, it's a really, really powerful light beam. It's also really, really small and focused, something on the order of about 1 millimeter wide when it's properly focused. So we take a computer and we draw out all the designs that we want the machine to do. We take that file, we load it into the software that controls the machine, and we tell it how much power to use for each line that we want it to trace. And it will adjust the power as it goes, and as long as we send enough power through at the right speed, it'll actually blast right through the wood and cut clean lines, better than you can get with just about anything else short of a mechanical device like a bandsaw. Of course, with a mechanical device, you can't make these really sharp corners and cuts like you can with the laser, and it also means that somebody has to be sitting there the whole time, you know, physically moving the part to get all the shapes. Whereas on this, we can load in the file, put the material under the laser, and once we've got all the settings right, we can press go. And we usually run the laser for about an hour at a time.
Yeah,
and we can get around 8 kits an hour out of the machine. So it's not super fast, but it's a whole lot faster than doing it by hand.
Right. So we produced over 100 kits for this particular build. So that's about 100 divided by 8. So we spent about 12 hours standing in front of the laser. Well, actually getting it up and going, and then the laser ran for that long.
You update them where you are.
Okay, so right now I've got all of my parts on the bottom glued together. Okay. And you can see I was very careful not to get much glue. You probably can't see it here, but again, there's just a tiny little bit of glue right along there. I can tell it's a little bit wet, and I can see the fact that it's white, but that's really about it. I don't have any drips. Okay. And it all looks pretty good. Everything's fitted together. I made sure that all of my parts, the edges are pushed down so that there aren't any gaps. And everything looks good. All right, I'm going to flip it over, put it here. And I've still got a little bit of glue left. I don't have to replenish my glue supply yet. Now I'm going to move on to step number 11. Okay, it's just the same thing. A little bit of glue all the way across. All right, that piece is done. All right, get my little basket out of the way there. Now, I want to show you something else for part number 12. Now, this is the one part. So if you notice, the tabs are really large compared to the amount of surface area I have to put glue. So right now, for this particular part, let's see if I can even get this a little bit closer. So you can see I'd only have a little bit of glue right there, and the same thing on this end. Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I want to put a whole lot of glue. In fact, what I want to do, and you don't have to do this, this is just a suggestion. Put extra glue on my little glue palette there. And I'm just going to dip the whole end of that down into the glue to make sure I get as strong a joint as I can get. Now this is the one place that's going to look a little bit sloppy because of the glue, but for the most part that'll be on the bottom side and it won't matter that much. All right. So now you can see I've got it all globbed up there. Pretty gluey on each end. And just put it in place. And you can also use your paper towel to wipe some of it off. But what hopefully you might be able to see here is now, yeah, maybe so if I get the light just right. Let's see. There's a little bit more glue this time squished out right there. And that's what we refer to as a fillet. Although generally fillets are extra glue we add in. And you can even put a little extra glue in there because we want that joint to be pretty strong. There's not a whole lot of surface area there. So you can see I've got quite a bit, even though it's not, well, let's see, let me get lined up there. Yeah, that may be a little bit difficult to see, but anyway. Try to get a little bit more glue on each side of that to make that part good and strong. And we're going to do the same thing down here. We don't want so much that it runs down the side of the arm though. So I'm just put an extra little bit of glue there. Kind of make sure it's touching both sides. It looks sort of like a weld bead, if you've ever seen a weld bead before. Kind of like a little white weld bead on there.
And it looks like people are caught up with you.
Okay, good. Well, it sounds like we've hit our stride. And if you want to move ahead and start gluing parts, you can do that as long as you're confident that you know what you're doing. And I have a feeling that may run a little bit, but So I'm going to wipe some of that off. In fact, I'm going to use my favorite tools, which is my fingers. Okay, well, we'll just kind of keep an eye on that and see what it does. All right, so I want to set that aside for a minute. We've got parts 11 and 12. Now it's time to glue the arm together. And here we go. We have to reveal another mistake that I made.
And before you do that, Bill, I just want to point out and make sure everyone notices that you glued one half of it.
Yes, only
one half.
Yeah, do not glue both sides of this on yet because we've got to get the arm in there. I mean, I guess theoretically you could still do it, but it's going to be a lot easier if you don't put the second arm support, this part right here, the arm, the big triangle. Don't put the other one on just yet. I'm putting a little bit of glue, a little glue fillet along here just to make that a little bit stronger. Okay, it looks like it's not running, so that's good. All right, now we got to talk about how you glue the arm together because this is a little trickier. Okay, and the first thing I want to do, and I only have to do it to one face. I got one face, and it doesn't matter which arm piece you pick. I just happen to pick 13 here. The side that doesn't have any writing on it. It may have some burn marks on it, but it doesn't have the 13 and it doesn't have the glue face side on it. On the opposite side of that, we just start spreading glue all over that face except for an area around this one pivot point right here. You want to keep the glue away from that area about that much, about the size. If you imagine if you put a dime right over the top of that hole, okay, this little circle here, maybe a nickel, okay? I don't want any glue in this area, and the reason is, when I push this together, if I've got glue right here, it's going to squish into that hole, and it's going to end up gluing yourself. You're going to end up gluing the arm to the pivot point or to the pivot peg, and then you're stuck. Your arm won't rotate, and of course that's not good. So keep a small area around this hole, about like that doesn't have any glue on it. These holes are okay. You don't have to worry about getting glue around these holes, but it's the other holes. So this is going to take a few minutes, so you just get the glue on there, and I don't mind getting my hands dirty. You might mind that, but I'm going to use my fingers to get this. I'm going to put a lot of glue on there, not a whole lot, just a little thin bead, about like so, all the way around. And stopping, going only around the outside of this hole here. Okay, a little bit right there, and I want a little bit on my hook, rubber band hook up here. Now I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to squish this out. If you don't want to use your finger, you can use your glue stick, your glue tool there. I'm spreading it all around. Another place you have to be careful. Now it's hard to not get glue in the little hole. Don't worry about that. We're going to clean that out in a minute, but you do have to remember to clean it out because that's where your string goes through. And if you don't clean that out, you won't be able to get your string through there. And you can use either the toothpick we included or the pointy end of the glue tool to kind of clean that glue out. All right, so I'm wiping and wiping, getting glue kind of evenly distributed all over this surface. I forgot a little bit right there. And I want to drag the glue, sorry, I'm not on the camera, drag the glue away from that hole and get it as flat as I can with none touching anywhere near the small hole in the middle, the pivot point hole. So I got a lot of glue on my finger now. I'm going to use my paper towel to wipe that off.
Bonnie just asked if you were going to point out something about these two parts. You had mentioned a mistake before.
Yes, we're going to get to the mistake in just a minute. It's not a big mistake, and it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference, but again, it's a mistake. And that's part of life. We make mistakes. Okay, so I've got glue all over this surface. Can't really see it because it's at this point it's almost clear. Okay, I'm going to lay it down like so. I'm going to put part number 14, that's because I just put part number 13 down. Part number 14 on top. Okay, and now while it still slides around, I don't have a lot of time, so I need to move kind of quickly. I want to get my basket put on. You don't have to glue the basket just yet, but I just want to make sure that my parts are lined up. Okay, and then here's the mistake. If you'll notice on both of these small parts, or both sides of this, it says glue face B on both sides. On side 13, or yeah, side 13, or piece 13 and piece 14, it says glue face B. Well, one of those should say glue face A, and I just forgot to change that. And that's how it goes. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to take part number 13, and you can see all these lines that are cut on here. Those are to show you where to put the glue in order to glue face B. So 13 and 17, it does say face B correctly. So those two are going to go together. But you only want glue on the part that's kind of darkened there by all those little lines. So again, you can use your finger or your glue tool. I want to put some glue on there. All right. And then I'm going to spread it around. It doesn't matter if you get near the hole this time. In fact, getting a little bit of glue down in the hole is good because we're going to put a peg through there and we want that to glue there. All right. So I got a little bit of glue. I dropped my part number 17 onto face 13. And boy, it doesn't take very long for it to want to stick. And then pretty quickly, I want to turn this over and get the pegs in it before it starts to stick anymore. So if you're having trouble, oops, there it went. One thing you can do is poke it all the way through a little bit, the peg there. Okay, see it's through both of them. I mean, it's sticking out both sides of part of the arm. And put it down so that it goes through. The hole. Oops. Come on, go on, come on, come on. Okay, there's that one. Here is that one. And here is, and again, you really don't have to worry if your pegs fall out later. All they do is help position things. I'm going to take the basket back off of the back for just a minute so that I can lay this flat on the table. And now we got to glue, see where it says glue face A? Well, that really should say, actually over here on part 14, it should say glue face A, and this says glue face A. So that's the mistake there. So I'm going to put a little bit more glue on here. Okay, I don't need a whole lot because the area isn't all that big. Using my finger, I'm going to get all around. You can get glue on the peg, that's not going to hurt anything. Kind of rubbing it around. Getting it all over that little dark in the line, the area with all the little lines on it. Okay. And then, oops, I need a little bit more right there. We'll use the glue tail just a little bit right there. All right. Okay. Now I'm putting part 16 down onto 14. Okay, then I'm going to take a binder clip. Okay, I got a lot of glue stuck to the wax paper. That's how we have it. And I want to put it on there, and I'll put it all the way as far back as it'll go. If you put it towards the front here, the squeezy part of the binder clip, it's going to pull your two parts away. You want to be very careful to make sure that the binder clip, let me see if I can get this lined up so you can see, that the base of the binder clip, or the bottom part right there, is as far down up against the wood as you can go. See that? There's no gap between the back side of the binder clip here and the little curved part piece of the wood. So I want to be careful to make sure it's all the way down. And I'm going to put two of them on each side, or one on each end, I guess. Can also help me hold my pen in place there. Okay, so it's going to look like this. See, I've got it, this part is all the way up against the wood, as far down as it'll go. Just make sure to look at it, make sure your groove looks nice. You want to wipe any glue that's in there. We're going to wipe that off. See, I got a big blob of glue right there. So I'm going to take part of my paper towel. I'm going to wipe that off. Okay. And then the other thing I want to do pretty quickly in a minute, I want to put a binder clip on the back end. Okay. And I want to make sure that my basket here still fits. Okay, it's still good. I want to put a fourth binder clip somewhere about in the middle here. Okay, so we've got this. Let's back up just a little bit so you can see. See how I've got that there? 4 binder clips. Okay, and in this case, on the back two, I want the binder clip up right where the top part, right basically in the middle of the arm. See, I got this part right there in the middle of the arm. Okay, now let's take the toothpick or the glue tool and be sure to clean all that glue out of that hole there at the back end. I'm Make sure that's pretty clean. And you might want to check the big hole just to make sure there's no glue there. I don't see any in mine, but you want to make sure there's no glue in there because that could cause a real problem later on. Okay. So I've got my arm now. The last thing to do to the arm, I've got both of my holes cleaned out. Okay, that one's cleaned out. I've cleaned out this one with my toothpick, or the glue stick will probably, the little glue tool will probably fit down in there too. But you got to be careful. You may have glue on your glue tool. So I'd use the toothpick. Just go in there and kind of roll it around a little bit. And there you go. Now let's glue the basket on. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue right there. A little bit of glue right there. And that's it. Glue it on. Okay, and there we go. All right. Now I want to set this down for a few minutes. We got some other parts. Oh, you know, we skipped a part earlier. I just noticed that. We skipped a part number 9 and 10. Well, let's come back. This is a good thing to do while we're kind of letting that set up a little bit. So a little oversight there that actually worked to our benefit. All right, I want to glue part number 9 in. So where's my glue stick? Put plenty of glue on. And for number 9, we want to go all along that face up under there. That's between the little tooth that sticks down. Anything that touches, any part of this that touches the base, any surface that touches it, you want some glue on there. Okay, we got a little blob there, but we're not going to worry about that. Okay. All right. Then the other thing I'm going to do here in just a second, I'm going to put glue on the very end with the tab. Okay, so I got a little bit right there. A little bit right there. Now, put the part in place. Let me get my glue out of the way. It drops in like so, and then it pulls back as far as it'll slide back. Now, quickly grab part number 10 here. We want to get it in place before our glue sets up. So I got a little bit more glue on the bottom. I'm going to drop it down in the hole here. And you probably need to move part number 9 around just a little bit to get number 10 in. Okay, then push number 9 and 10 together like this, making sure that number 9 is as far back as it will go. And you'll see a little bit of glue squeezing up along there. That's fine. All right. You just want to make sure that there's no gap between part number 9 and part number 10 right along here. All right. So now let's go back to our arm, and we're going to put the 2 spacers. I'm going to run my dowel rod through there first like so. Get my little binder clip. I guess it doesn't want to get out of the way. Okay, and then I'm going to put my 2, don't put any glue on this part. No glue on this next step here. 2 spacers on each side again like we did earlier. That way able to see, let me get that angled around there so you can see. So I got 2 spacers right there, and I'm going to put 2 spacers over here. Okay. And I want the part of the dowel that's sticking out on each side of the spacers to be pretty close to the same length. Okay, so that length there should be about the same as that length over here. Just get it balanced. All right. So now we're getting pretty close to the last step here. It kind of all happens all at once. Okay, I'm going to take this binder clip off because it's going to be in the way. And I'm about to lose the spacer there. I'm going to take this binder clip off too. I should have put these on top. I'm going to move these over to the top. So next time we do this, we'll know to put these on the top. Like so. All right, I'm going to drop the arm down in this little cradle there. I'm going to put the dowel rod through the pivot hole. Now I grab part number 20, put some glue on it. I'm out of glue. Okay. I put part 20. Let's see, how does this look on? Let's come on around a little bit more. Okay, drop it in place. Kind of rotate the arm up until the pivot pokes through. Then I'm going to do the same thing again that I did earlier with part number 21 that I did with 12. I'm going to put extra little bit of glue on the table there. And I'm going to glob up the end. Oops, that's a heck of a glob there. Glob up that end. Okay. I'm going to drop part number 21 in place. Okay. And there we go. We've got two more parts we need to put on, but I'm going to do a real quick little rotation check just to make sure everything looks good. Okay. It's rotating very easily. You shouldn't feel any resistance. It should be pretty loose. Now I take the last two spacers. I want to do a little test fit first just to make sure. Okay, that one's good.
Okay, Bill, we have
Yes, sir.
We have a question.
Okay.
What do you do if your arms won't stick together?
They won't stick together.
That's it's hard for me to visualize. Are you saying they won't stay together? That was the binder clips would hold them together. So this is turning. Say parts 13 and 14 aren't sticking together.
Have you got plenty did you get glue all over the surface? And then use the binder clips to hold them together. Yeah, they should be sticking together. The binder clips are pretty strong. They should be holding it together. If not, send us a picture of your setup, and we'll try to see if we can't diagnose the problem here for you. But while we're waiting for him to send his picture, I'm going to take these last two pegs that spacers that I've got, and I'm going to put a little bit of glue. I'm going to use the glue stick for this.
Hey, Bill, will you hold up a binder clip?
Oh, yeah.
So that...
They're right here. These are the binder clips. Whoops.
Oh, hang on. Here you go.
Yeah, okay. And you pinch them on the back. Okay, and that opens up. And if you want a thrill, put your finger in there and let go. But no, don't do that. It'll hurt. See, and that squeezes. You use that. That's really stiff in there. That squeezes really hard. And you can put it over your piece of wood like we've done here to squeeze those arm parts together like that. And you'll probably even see a little bit of glue squeeze out on the top. That's a good thing. That's not right.
Okay, he said that works.
Okay, so he's got it. All right, good. So everybody's going now. All right, so here's the last step, and you need to be a little bit careful about this. But I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the back side. Well, actually, I'm going to cover up my little dot because I don't want my dot showing. A little bit of glue on one whole face of a spacer. All right, and then I'm going to stick it on the hole or on the peg and push it all the way up to where it's touching and it's pushing against the part right here. So this piece should be glued to this piece and to the peg. It's okay for this to be glued to the peg. And in fact, I'm going to put a little bit more glue on top of the whole thing just to make sure it's all held together. Okay, if you don't do this, your peg will eventually come out, and you know you don't want to do that. You might lose it. Okay, so I've got extra glue. Let me see if we can get really close there. See how I've got some glue on that face there? I don't know if it's showing up very well. I've got a little extra I want to wipe off because it's ugly. But it's okay to get glue on this side. See all this glue right along here? Okay, that's a good thing. That's what you want. Same thing on the other side. Oops, I just bumped my little... I'm putting glue all over the face of the washer. It doesn't hurt to get glue down in the little hole. That's a good thing. I'm going to push it on. A little bit of glue came off on the peg, which is perfect. Okay. Try to get your peg balanced in the middle so that the same amount is sticking out at each side. That makes it look a little nicer. Of course, if you don't like that, you can make it however you want. I got plenty of glue on there. And I want to do I want to check 2 more things. I want to make sure I've got good smooth rotation here before I turn this thing loose. And I want to make sure there's no glue in my little hole down here that the string eventually goes in. All right, now we've come to the very hardest part of this entire process. That is, we set it aside and we don't touch it, ideally until tomorrow. If you can't wait until tomorrow, give it at least a few hours. Come back after lunch, watch your favorite TV show or a movie or 2, whatever you're doing right now to kill the time. And then come back and play with it. But you got to be careful. If you don't wait for a while, you could end up blowing your catapult apart when you shoot it, because there are a lot of forces, and we're going to talk about force in a minute. A lot of forces, particularly on this part right here, and this little hole. When you fire this thing, they're pretty high, and if you're not careful, you can pull your catapult apart if the glue hasn't dried. So you need to be careful about that. Now, what I want to do, I want to set this guy aside. I've left my binder clips on. You can see that. In fact, if you want, you can go ahead and put the 4th binder clip. Wow, that's actually hard to squeeze there. The 4th binder clip. All right, maybe we won't. Onto the arm there, just to give it some extra hold. So I've got 4 binder clips on it now. Okay. I want to just very carefully pick it up, make sure all my joints under here still look good. Sometimes when we're working on top, you can push down, it'll separate this a little bit. Just give it an overall look around, make sure there aren't any big glue blobs or drips. Make sure all your joints are together. And then, like I said, set it down and don't touch it. Okay, it's harder not to do something half the time than it is to try to do something. So we are done gluing. I'm going to throw all this, not save your glue tool, but I'd take the other part and throw it away. You're done with the wax paper. I'm done with all my parts. Any other parts you can either keep or discard. You might want to keep them because who knows, they may come handy later on in a future project. All right, now I'm going to explain what the rubber band tool is all about and the string and the rubber bands on my other one here that's already done. Okay. So in fact, I'm going to set this guy out of the way so it's not even a temptation. He's way over here. And we'll leave him here till tomorrow. All right. So now let me disassemble this guy to show you how you put the string on and the rubber bands on. And one thing that's kind of interesting about this little design here is that I can adjust lots of different things on there, or a couple of different things on this to make it shoot further or not as far. All right, so I'm taking the rubber band off. I'm taking it back to the condition you will have it in when you come back to it after the glue is dried. So now what I need to do is untie this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat in here. Well, thanks. I got my pocket knife right here. Okay, so we're done with that. Now, first thing you want to do, pick up your string, okay? Tie a great big fat knot in the end of it, okay? What you can do is just do an overhand knot and try to get it close to the end. You don't want a whole lot of what I call the tail sticking out. That's the part between the end and the knot. We're just going to double over a couple of times.
Is there any trick to making knots? Some of these kids might not be as adept at.
Yeah, let me see if I can't do this up close. This is going to be a little hard to see, but we'll do the best we can here. I think everybody can at least tie an overhand knot. Let me start over here.
Is that like what you do when you're tying your shoe?
No, well, sort of, not really. I mean, overhand knot's the simplest form of knot there is. Okay.
Are knots important to engineers?
Oh, knots are really important. Well, I use knots all the time, but well, that's a different conversation. So I got my bear string here, it has no knots in it. All I want to do is make a loop, like so, see that? And then just poke it through. I think everybody can handle that. So a really simple little knot like that, and I'm going to pull it tight. And don't worry about how much is sticking out, it doesn't matter. You've got plenty of string. I'm going to pull it tight. Then I'm just going to do that again. And I want to make sure that as I pull it tight, see there's my little knot right there. I want to try to make this knot kind of land right on top of that knot. And you can see now how much fatter the knot is. Let me get this out of the way so we got a clear background. See how fat that knot's getting? Okay. I'm gonna do that one more time just for fun. See how big I can make this knot. Okay, so I got a great big fat knot on the end of there now, right? Gigantic wart, right? Okay. All this knot has to do, it has to be big enough. So I'm gonna go to the other end now. I'm at the other end of the string, the knot's down here. Okay, the knot's down here, right? See that? You can probably see it from there. Take the other end. It doesn't matter which side you do it on. Just poke it through the arm like this. Okay, so I've got my string going through the hole. That's why it's important to clean the glue out of that hole so you can get the string through there. So I've got and the knot's plenty big. There's no way that knot's going to pull through that hole there. You can see how big the hole is versus how big the knot is. Let's see how close we can get and still. Okay, great big fat knot. Now, I'm going to tie a series of single overhand knots all along my string. And in a minute, you'll understand why I'm doing that.
Does it matter where?
Well, sort of. You don't need them up here. You probably want at least like the width of a hand between here and where you tie your first knot. But it doesn't matter where you tie the knots. Just tie a series of them. I'm going to make mine roughly about an inch far apart, or 2.5 centimeters, something like that. See, I got a couple knots there. I'm going to tie 4 or 5 of them. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I can adjust the angle that my arm shoots at. And that affects what we call the trajectory, which is the path that the object takes through the air. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. So now you can see I've got my string. Let's see if we can get close up here. I'm kind of tethered to my, but you can see I've got several knots in that string, not too far from the other end. And we may have to add a few more in a minute, but let's see where we are. Now in your catapult, mine's slightly different. Mine has a little slot, but yours has a little hole, all right, at the back end of this little funny little squiggly line right here. Yours has a big hole right there, whereas mine has a slot. What you want to do...
Maybe doing that to their catapult even.
No, don't do this now. This is for later when it's time to string your catapult up. Let's just show it. I am going to use this one, even though this is the one we're not supposed to be touching, just to show how it works. So I've got my hole right here, okay? See the little hole right there at the end? That's big enough to allow the single knots to pass through. So I'm going to stick my string through there like that. See how that's done? And let me go back over here. Now this might be a little confusing because we're using two different models, but anyway. Once you get it through there, okay, and you'll figure this out as you play with it. You guys are smart. Okay, the knot, I pull the string all the way forward to the end over the little squiggly bump there, okay? All right, and so the string is now all the way forward in this, and that prevents the string in the catapult arm from going up. So it goes this far and then it stops. And what I'll do later on when I'm playing with my catapult, I will experiment with different angles. See, this is a pretty shallow angle right now. Let's come back, Keith. We'll come back to here. That's a pretty shallow angle. What I can do is pull the string back out and go to the next knot, okay? And now it goes a little bit further. And I can go to the next knot. Let's go all the way to the end so it really makes it obvious that we're changing. See, now the arm is almost completely vertical, but it stops there. And that's what I want to play with later on to get the optimum shooting distance for my catapult. So you guys will get to experiment with that and see where your catapult shoots the best. Okay, so there's the string. Now, to put rubber bands on, there's 2 different ways you can do it. I'm going to show you the way I like to do it, which is I take the string back off so that I can rotate the arm all the way around. And I'm going to take one of my rubber bands and I'm going to hook it underneath there, like so. Let's come over here to the side camera. Okay, can we get to that one, Keith? Okay, see, I've got the rubber band on the hook and I'm going to start to rotate, but I need to make sure that the rubber band is in the groove. See how it's in the groove there? You don't want it over here or over here. You want to make sure both strands of the rubber band are inside the little groove we made earlier when we glued parts 13 and 7, or parts 16 and 17 to parts 13 and 14. So I'm going to rotate back around, holding the rubber band just a little bit tight. Then I'm going to hook onto the first little hook there. And I'm going to again check to make sure that my rubber bands are still in the groove, and it looks like they are. Then I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to hold it with one hand while I stick the string through the hole, or in my case, through the slot. Back in, pull the string all the way forward, and now my catapult is strung and is ready to shoot. And let's see, well, we already know this one. Once again, Dawn, open your mouth. All right, there we go. Well, I missed, but that's okay.
Okay, this will probably be a good time for a break right here.
This is another good time for a break. Any questions you have, send them on, and we'll go from there. Otherwise, in a few minutes, we're going to start talking about how a catapult actually works. A little bit about the science behind it. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, we are back, and I hope everybody's caught up and we're ready to go. Before we get too much further, I'd like to please ask everyone to subscribe and turn on your notifications because we really appreciate when you do that. Okay, Keith, and where are we headed next? We are going to do...
I think we're going to do this.
Okay.
Almost there.
All right, so the question is, for this project, when you thought you were done or nearly done, how much more work did you have to do?
Okay, there's an old thing called the 80-20 rule, and this isn't something I made up. This is actually out there. When you're 80% done, you think you're 80% done, and you've only got 20% left, but it's really you've got about 20% done and 80% left. There's a lot of details that you need to be aware of and keep track of when you're doing a project like this. And as you can see, even we weren't able to keep up with all the details, and we made a few mistakes. So it takes a long time to do a project, so you have to be very patient, and when you think you're getting near the end, be careful. Don't be deceived by that, because you may have a lot more work to do than you realize, and that's just part of engineering. Okay, what else have we got?
A couple of questions. We discussed these over the break, and I think we're probably going to take these next time, but I'll run them by the audience here. One is, do you have a favorite engineering project you've ever done? And what was the hardest engineering project you've ever done? I think there was a way you wanted to handle those.
All right, I do have a favorite engineering project, and I'm going to keep that a secret until next time because it's a really cool project and I want to have pictures of it. But now, what's the hardest project I've ever done? Well, building things is pretty easy. Building a business is pretty hard. That's probably the hardest thing I've ever tried to build. But there is another project that I've worked on, and again, this is where a picture would be really helpful. So next time I will answer both of those questions. What's the hardest thing I've ever done, and what's my favorite thing I've ever done? So tune in next week for that. And we'll see what I have in mind. Okay.
Are we ready to get into some science?
We are ready to get into some science. So let's take a look at some science. All right, so there are several different concepts I want to talk about here. And the way this works, you can kind of think of engineering as sort of like being the conductor of an orchestra. In an orchestra, you've got all these instruments over here, maybe the wind instruments, and you've got the brass over here, and the woods over here, and the strings over here, and all the kettle drums or whatever in the back. Well, engineering is sort of like that, but instead of instruments, we have ideas and concepts and knowledge, some science knowledge over here, some math knowledge over here, some knowledge of how things are made over here. We've got tools over here that we have to understand how they work. And we take all those skills and we roll them up and we use them all at once to create an engineer's version of a symphony. And in our case, our symphony is our Catapult. So you take all these different concepts, all the math skills, all the science skills, and even the fabrication skills, which is tool use, to make something. And let's start looking at some of the science skills that you need to be able to use. And the very first one is, do we have our illustration? Yeah, force, okay? And force is a very, very simple concept. It's simply nothing more than a push or a pull. Okay, and you can see our little green guys there. One of them's pushing and one of them's pulling. So here's a simple spring scale, and this is what we use to illustrate force. Okay, so I'm pulling on this, I'm adding a force, I'm pulling it on it, and as you can see, well, you can't read the scale, but you can see the little thing going down, and the harder I push, or the harder I pull, the stronger the spring reacts. So a force is nothing more than a push or a pull. Now let's look at another really simple concept, and that is energy. Okay, and there are all different forms of energy. There's solar energy, there's radiant energy, there's electrical energy, there's what's called mechanical energy, potential energy. Our sun there, you can see a picture of the sun there, that has lots of different forms all rolled into one. It's got thermal energy because obviously the sun is very hot. It's got nuclear energy. You can see the little picture of the atom down there. There is energy stored inside of atoms. The picture of the car there is an example of what's called kinetic energy. And we're going to talk a little bit more about kinetic energy in a minute. So, but the first form of energy we want to talk about is called potential energy, okay? That we're going to talk about two. We're going to talk about potential energy, and then we're going to talk about kinetic energy. And let's talk about potential energy first. And I like to think of potential energy It's kind of like money, okay? If you want to buy something, you have to have money. Well, energy is kind of the same way. And you can think of about, if you want to make something move, you push on it, but you're adding energy to it. So energy is kind of like what it takes to make something move. And potential energy is energy that we don't necessarily see, but it's stored in something, kind of like the way my money is stored in this little piggy bank here, okay? It's 4 coins, you can hear it rattling. I know they're in there because I can feel the weight of them, and I can hear them rattling around, but I can't see the coins, okay? So those coins are in there, they're sort of like energy, just like in our rubber bands that we use on our catapult. I can stretch the rubber band, okay, and as I stretch it, I'm adding energy to it. I'm adding what's called elastic potential energy. And I'm going to stretch the rubber band out, and right now, it's holding some energy. I can't see the energy in there, but it's in there as potential energy. Now, the only way I can tell by looking at this is that the rubber band is generally longer now than it was when it's not stretched. That's really the only way I would know that there's potential energy in there, okay? But this is very important because now I can take this energy and I can do something very useful with it. I can store it and walk around with it and use it, okay? And there are other forms of stored potential energy. For example, there's chemical energy. This is a can of propane. You all probably seen this in the store. It's full of gas. There's lots of energy stored inside of here. Lots of potential chemical energy, all right? Another form of chemical energy is in this black powder right here, okay? I just want to show you this. I want to show you but you can't really see potential energy, okay? So I've got a nice little pile of stuff. Kind of looks like black sand right there, okay? All right, just by looking at it, so we'll see if we can get it on the camera there. Okay, nothing particularly interesting or exciting about it. Okay, just looks like dirt, really. But if I were to take this match right here, okay, which also has potential energy stored in the little green part on the end here, okay, and set it to this, we'd see a big flash, we'd see smoke, we'd see fire, and it would stink in here. And since we're in the studio here, if I were to do this, I would get in a lot of trouble, so I'm not going to do this. But I just wanted to show you that sometimes it's difficult to see what potential energy looks like. But it's really useful because I can do lots of things with the chemical potential energy stored in this. All right, so now we've got potential energy. Well, kinetic energy is the energy of motion, like the car we saw earlier. When things move, they have kinetic energy. For example, oh, I'm afraid I've eaten all of my candy, so I'll just have to launch some of these. Oh, well, anyway. Well, we've kind of seen this before. When I launch something, we see the piece of candy goes flying through the air. I'm going to launch these little spacers instead. They're easier. Okay, and as they move, we can see them moving, right? That's kinetic energy. That's the energy of motion. All right. So now using my catapult, there's one other concept I want to talk about here, and that's called torque. Okay, we'll bring up our torque video. And a torque is nothing more than a twist, okay? You've got a little picture of a wrench there, okay? And a twist about a rotating pivot point, all right? So I've got my little wrench here, and I'm going to put a torque on this nut. See, the nut spins around the axis here, okay? So if I put this wrench on here, and I'm pushing with a force, so now I'm already tying two things together. I've got force, and I've got torque, which are interrelated. Okay, and if I push this way, then obviously I can tighten the nut. And you all are familiar with this. If I keep doing this, I can squeeze very tightly down with this nut. That's why nuts and bolts are great things to hold things together. Now, the amount of torque I put on it is also proportional to where I hold it or where I hold the wrench. When I'm way back here at the very end, and you all have experienced this before, I have lots of strength, or I'm able to put a lot of torque on this nut. If I hold the wrench way up here, it gets much more difficult to turn. That's because the distance from the pivot point to where I'm putting the force is a lot smaller. Okay, so my torque is smaller. All right, but I can still twist it. And here's another example of torque. believe it or not, got my little drink here. I'm going to twist the cap off. I'm putting a torque on the cap, or a twist, and I'm opening it up and I'm getting to my fruit juice. And then I'm going to twist it back on, putting a twisting force on that cap so it doesn't come off. Now, what in the world does fruit juice have to do with a catapult? Well, it doesn't much, but let's take a look at this catapult and see how these different concepts we just talked about apply here. So I'm going to put a force on the back of my catapult right here. I'm pushing on it, okay? So I'm pushing down and it makes the catapult go down. Now, since the catapult is rotating about this point, I'm actually putting a torque on it because I'm making the arm twist. Torques make things twist, okay, or rotate. And my arm, you can see, is rotating. As I'm rotating, the rubber band is being stretched, okay? So I'm adding what kind of energy to it? I'm adding potential energy to it. So now I've got potential energy stored in my rubber band waiting to get out. It wants to get out. It likes to come out. Energy likes to move, okay? So I'm still applying a force back here to hold it. I've got energy stored up in here, and I've applied a torque to it to get my arm back in position. Then when I let go, I'll shoot my piece of candy for one last time, if I can make it stay on there. Okay. And the potential energy is now converted into kinetic energy. So we've got force, we've got energy, we've got potential energy, kinetic energy, and torque all tied together into this thing to make it work. Okay, and that's what I was talking about, how I take different things and I've got woodworking over here, I've got manufacturing skills over here, I've got design skills. I had a little bit of science involved in figuring out where to make my string stop. And that all ties together into this catapult. Now there's one last little thing we want to talk about very quickly, and that is the shape or the path that my piece of candy took. Okay? Whenever something is flying through the air, like my piece of candy is, that's called projectile motion, okay? And it follows a path called a parabola, which you all may or may not have had this in school yet. It's a little bit more advanced, a little bit older math than most middle school people. Okay, but it's called a parabola. And it's a very important curve you'll learn about a lot in the future. But I can affect the shape of this parabola by adjusting a couple of things. One, I can adjust how far back I stretch the rubber band. If I pull it back further, okay, I'm stretching it, and as I push this down, I'm adding even more potential energy, okay, which we talked about earlier. I can also change the angle at which my catapult releases, and that also affects the shape of the parabola. And what your job to do, once your catapult is all dried and ready to go, is you can explore adding more rubber bands, changing the positions on here of where they're attached, and changing the position that your arm releases, the angle, and see how that affects how your catapult works. So there's a little bit about the science behind how a catapult works. Okay, so we're just about to the end of our journey here. What else do we want to cover, Keith?
Well, we have one more of...
Almost there.
All right, so the question is, how hard is it to be an engineer? And so I guess that could be taken a few different ways. But
Okay.
I think the way to take it is, how hard is it to be get through school, get the education, get the certifications, and be employed and working as an engineer? It's
not hard as long as, one, you're not afraid of it. Two, you study math. Math and science are the most important things, particularly your math skills that you want to develop starting now. Okay? Engineering school is not easy. It's not for everyone. So it does take a lot of hard work, a lot of discipline, and a lot of patience. But in the end, being an engineer for me is very rewarding because I create things not only that I get to see how they work, but things that other people use and enjoy. And it's a very, very rewarding feeling to see that happen. It does take a lot of patience and a lot of discipline, though. And engineers make pretty good money once they get out into the world.
Unless they run a nonprofit.
All right, is that it, or are there any other questions?
No, I think we're coming to the end here. I think we just want to remind people that all suggestions are welcome. This is the first time we've done a live stream, and we didn't have a whole lot of time to put it together. We did as much as we could in the time we had, so any suggestions would be welcome to how to make this better. Should it be faster, slower, longer, shorter? Any of that especially would be helpful. Timing would be helpful. If you're watching this on replay, because 1 o'clock wasn't going to work for you, let us know if there's a different time that works better for a live stream.
We'll be sending out a survey.
And we'll be sending out a survey if you're part of our Facebook group. And then
we'll send it by email to everybody who we got kits ordered from.
Oh, okay. We're going to send it by email to everyone who ordered kits. And then do you want to talk at all about this is number one. This is not planned to be the final kit. So
right. No, we're going to have lots more kits coming. We have several in the pipeline. We think you're going to enjoy them as much as you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoy the Catapult. We have many more coming up, and please, if you have an idea, please send us a suggestion. I'm very interested in seeing what you young people out there would like to see. So please send us suggestions. Please make comments. Let me know how we did today. Don't be too harsh, but we would like some constructive criticism. And once again, please subscribe. Don't forget to do that. And please turn on your notifications. And there we are. Number one in the can. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.